Okay. Okay, we're recording. Hello, I'm Jonathan Pearl.
Hi, I'm Rabbi Richard Bernholz, Rabbi Emeritus of Congregation Shari Tzedek in Tampa. I was the senior rabbi there for 32 and a half years, and I'm delighted to be able to talk with Jonathan, who was one of my 10th grade, ninth grade confirmation students.
And you bar mitzvahed me.
Right, and
Okay.
I confirmed you.
Okay. Okay, my first question I have for you is it is said that God is infinite goodness. If this is true and there is evil in the world, then how can he exist if he's infinite goodness?
I think that first of all, I think that Aquinas makes assumptions that are true for him, but not necessarily true for everybody else, and they're certainly not true for me. I don't think that God is infinite goodness, and I think that's one of the problems with that particular proof of his, namely that the world is filled with evil, and therefore if you're using him as God as ultimate goodness, and there's evil in the world, then that proof of God fails. I certainly have God in my life, but I don't rely on this kind of reasoning or the need to prove a God in a logical sense. Now, as for where I think evil in the world comes from, I think that human beings are born with, at least this is what Judaism teaches, two inclinations: the inclination to do good and the inclination to do evil. And that what happens is that sometimes people choose to do evil. And therefore, it's a matter of human choice. Now, in addition to that, I think that Aquinas' second proof, which is that there's order in the world in everything, is also not sustainable. And that also, therefore, for me, explains why, um, I'm sorry, stop the recording for 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. The other way that evil comes into the world is in terms of natural occurrences like floods and hurricanes and volcanoes. And that's where I think that Aquinas is wrong about God being the ultimate planner and architect. And part of the reason, therefore, because nature has free will to do whatever it wants, because of that, you end up with natural disasters. So between humans making poor decisions and nature and humans both having free will, I think that there are many openings in the world for evil, or what you would call tragedy, to occur.
Okay, okay. Now there's an objection in Aquinas that says that maybe there's evil in the world because maybe he puts it there and he wants to like extract the goodness out of it.
I think that that is an argument that I find reprehensible, because if you look at it from a broader point of view, it means that God is a mean God toying with us, making us miserable to somehow find something good out of it. Let me be clear. Nothing good comes out of a tragedy, whether it's a human tragedy, a poor decision, or a natural disaster. Now, can we, after the fact, find ways to keep going, maybe? The answer is yes, and maybe we can do some good things, but it doesn't come out of the evil. And anybody who wants to make the argument that God puts evil in the world so something good can come out of it. Explain to me why God allowed 6 million Jews and many others to be murdered in the Holocaust. Tell me the good that came out of killing, gassing a 2-year-old and then cremating him and his parents with him. I think it's a detestable argument, and I think it's an argument that comes out of, what's the word for it? It's an argument that comes out of a loss of anything else to say or come up with.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, I agree with you on that. The 6 million Jews, I don't think he put it there. Yeah, I think you're right on with the toying. Okay, my next question is, how can you prove to people that God exists? How can you prove to me that He exists?
I can't, and I don't try, and I don't try. I don't think that knowing God is in the world and in your life is a matter of proof. And that's where I think Aquinas goes very, very wrong. I think the way that you sense God in your life, and I am an existentialist, is you sense God in your existence. Martin Buber, for example, is a wonderful existentialist. There are many others. And he explains that we know the world in two ways. I, it, meaning we know things as objects. We interact with them, but we can't have a relationship with them. On the other hand, we know things as I, thou. And those are generally interpersonal relationships, though you can have an I, thou relationship with a beautiful sunset or with lovely music. For example, have you ever listened to music and you knew what the name of the song was? You got a sense of the beat. You knew who the artist was. You knew everything about it as an it. And then as you continued listening, you lost sight, you lost track and consciousness of the fact that you were listening to the music, and your mind wandered into other areas. As a result, in my view and in Buber's view, God is present in that moment. Whenever you see someone that you really like and you run up to them, give them a big hug, God is present in that moment. Whenever you do suffer a tragedy, God can't solve it, but there's a sense that God is there with you, perhaps comforting you through it. Um, so for me, God is in human experience. If I experience something, then it's real. Assuming that I am of sound mind, anything that I experience through my personal filters is real to me and therefore exists. Can I prove it? No. Might I be absolutely wrong and be deceiving myself? Yes, that's called existential risk. But I know that when I put my arms around my wife and give her a hug and a kiss, and I feel something special, I know that's real. So when I see a moment of beauty or a moment in which people do something beautiful, I sense God is present in that moment. I sometimes also solve problems during the night when I'm fast asleep, sometimes in dreams. I think God's present in those moments. Am I crazy? Maybe. But for me, it's real and it works. So I think it's folly to think that you can prove there's a God. And if you have to prove it, then nobody is going, if God is something, God has to be proven, and they've been trying to do it for hundreds of years. If that happens, then it means that for those people, God doesn't exist. People keep looking for something that's in their own backyard.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How like when we hug the person we love, how God is there to like support us and be like, good job. This is what I guided you to, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's in that sense. I think it's in the feeling.
The feeling.
Um, you can have an argument with a person and God is there.
Okay. So you think God is with us no
Yeah,
matter where we go?
God is there in moments. God is in life, and both animate and inanimate. And if you are open to those moments, you will sense God's presence. It's just like if I say to you, between leaving your dorm and going to your car, there are $5 and $100 bills strewn all around. You're going to be going to your car from the dorm with your eyes peeled to the ground looking for all of those. Well, in Judaism, we say a prayer, a number of prayers every morning. And what those do is condition us to be aware of God moments in our lives. For example, thank you, God, for having me um, want to make this a better world. Well, when I see an opportunity, that's going to resound in my head. It's going to resonate with me. So God is everywhere. God is in animate, in spirit, but not a construct or an idea to be proven. God is in relationship.
Okay. So do you think he's in the room with you right now?
It depends. What are you sensing? Um, is there something special about this moment for you?
Okay, so it is a sensing thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not in every moment. You stumble upon those moments.
Like
But
like
sometimes you make those moments. Again, every night I turn in bed to my wife and tell her I love her. Um, Something special goes on in me when I do that. When she says back, I love you too. I don't know. We sleep better.
yeah. Never go to bed angry, always go to bed saying I love you. Now like would you say God's with you if like uh
God's, God's in the world if you're open to God moments.
okay. So like let's say you love someone and this song that you closely identify with them comes on out of nowhere. Do you think that's God?
I think God can be present in those moments.
Okay.
God is not an object or a thing or an idea. God is a sense. You experience God. You don't prove God. You experience God.
Okay, experience.
Can you prove a rainbow? No, but you can
Oh,
experience one.
yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, I have another question. My third question is it is said that God gives us intelligence and is the highest being over us. Do you believe that is true?
I don't know. Um, it doesn't mean anything to me. I think that we have evolved to have different levels of intelligence that varies from people. I don't think that God is a higher being or lower being or middle being. I don't think God is a being. Once again, God is something that you experience. It's not some presence that you prove. Um, so, no, I don't believe that to be true at all. And if everything came from God, and in terms of intelligence, then why would a good God that God purports to be in proof, um, which is his good God proof? I don't know. There's one of them in which God is good. Um, if that's the case, then why does a good God give some people greater intelligence than others? Why does God make some people have much lower intelligence to the point that they can't function? and then be trounced upon by society. No, I don't.
Okay. Okay. Uh, do you believe that all good things in the world are because God puts the goodness there, or they're just good in the world along with Him? Now, that question kind of correlates with your question, your answer to the second question, but I'm trying to go off of it. I'm trying to build off of it.
Well, you know, um, if all the good things in the world are there because God puts them there, then all the bad things are there too because God puts them there. But then, um, but if that's the case, then why would God put good things in the world and not, and then what? Just leave the bad things to happen? Then where do the bad things come from? If you're going to explain exactly where good things come from, then you're going to have to explain to me where the bad things come from.
That's a really good point.
And if you can't explain to me where the bad things come from, then you have to explain to me how you know that the good things come from God.
Okay. Okay.
Again, this is Aquinas setting assumptions that exist only in his mind. Um, you know, you can make a touchdown by scoring 6 points. However, is that an absolute rule of nature? Is that an absolute law of the universe? No, somebody made it up. And in fact, if you're playing Canadian football, it's you still get 6 points. However, in Canadian football, you only get 3 downs to make a first down. In American football, you get 4. So which one's football? Who put it there? Who makes the rules? And do any of these rules apply except for the person who makes them? So yeah, he sets up his own rules. Then he makes his own conclusions from his own rules. And he says, look at what I've done. See, nobody else can argue with me. Happy guy.
Happy guy.
Ready?
Yeah, it's resumed.
Okay. So he was a very happy guy. He created his own assumptions. Then he created the logical conclusions that result from the assumptions that he created and originated. And so he was a happy guy. He set up the basis for his proof and then he proved it. Except the basis for his proof, if it's not correct, makes the rest of his logic totally um, fallacious and ridiculous because it becomes what basically a self-fulfilling prophecy. Um, um, what he was doing is playing the game that medieval philosophers played, including Jewish philosophers like Moses, Maimonides. Um, they would set up a premise and then prove their premise, and that became their proof. Why were they so determined to prove God? Well, there was competition from science. Suddenly science was making more and more inroads, coming up with answers that had been the realm before of religion, and it was proving religious assumptions wrong. So religion suddenly had to defend itself by coming up with proof for God. It needed to be as good in the proof game as science was. And I think it led to this kind of thinking and logic. But a logic that's self-prophesying is nothing but an internal game that is meaningless outside itself.
Okay. Um, my last question I have for you: do you believe that God writes our life and that everything happens because of God?
No. um, if I guess it's true if you like being a puppet on the end of a string, so that none of your decisions make any difference. And all you're doing is playing out the role that God has set for you. Might as well go back to the idols that Abraham's father made and that Abraham's father manipulated, because other than that, that's exactly what we would be. And that too is an explanation that's often given for evil. And that is, we really can't avoid it. There was a philosopher named Leibniz, Leibniz. And Leibniz said that when you're born, you're a nomad. What's it called? Well, at any rate, his idea is you're kind of like one of those contact cold pills that has all the monads. He said you're a monad. And all in a contact cold pill or a time release pill, all the medicine is in little tiny, I don't know what you call them, just tiny little specks inside the pill. But each one is coded to break down at a different time over a 24-hour or 12-hour period. That's why it's called time release. So his concept of monads is that when you're born, you're filled with all these little things. And as you continue to grow and age, whatever God wrote for you comes to pass. Well, so I guess the idea is, okay, if a tragedy occurs, it occurs because it was written into the script. Oh, well, I'm happy now. Well, I don't think that's the way we live life. I don't think anybody's happy with tragedies. It also takes responsibility away from people. Remember before when I said that we have free will and that we have the ability to make decisions, and sometimes we make poor ones? Well, you can't make a poor decision if the script's all written out ahead of time.
Exactly. So you're saying the good decisions we make is because of God, and the poor decisions are because of God.
The good decisions and bad decisions are because of us as human beings, not God. God, I think that we are born with basically free will. However, I also have to add that that free will ain't free. And here's the reason. I believe that 95% of the person you're going to be when you are conceived happens at conception. So much that happens in our brains, brain chemistry, also development of the brain, development of our body parts. All of that happens when we are embryos. And just like you look half like your mother and half like your father, there's no way you were going to come out looking like me because I had nothing to do with you. But when people are born, they are the biological product of the genes and of the genetic roll of the dice. And the way they come out really determines 95% of who they're going to be. If I remember, you're not particularly tall. What are the chances that you are going to be the center on an NBA team? Basketball, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that you can do, and there are a lot of things that you can't do simply because you weren't born either with the brain chemistry or the brain wiring or the body parts or many other things. And then the world, other people who are born different ways also interact with you. And the way they interact with you is determined by the way you are. And then the way they react with you further formulates who you're becoming and turning out to be. So there's not a lot of room. The only room there is, to some extent, I believe, is the power of moral judgment. You can choose for good or you can choose for evil, and it's up to you. If you have to have a logical explanation for this, the only one that I've heard, and I think it's nonsense, but I'll share it with you, and that is that when God created the world as Aquinas' all-powerful being, God realized that if God filled up the entire world and it was all God, as Aquinas suggests, that in fact, as you asked, we would all be nothing but puppets on God's string. But God, in God's infinite wisdom and all-powerful nature, omnipotence, God decided to limit God's power, pulled himself out of part of the world, and left room for free will for humans. That gives you a little bit of structure that you can use to answer some of these questions for Aquinas, because at least it leaves you free will. Aquinas didn't allow that. But once again, I think it's games playing because it's creating a logical structure so that everything can be fit in. The problem is you have to make the structure such that things will fill in. But there are too many things that still don't fit in. By the way, that last one that I explained, that God uses God's power to limit God's power, is called the limited God theory in theology.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting me pick your brain about these questions. It means a lot.
Yeah, I'm glad. By the way, you were in confirmation, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, thank you for your time. This helped a lot. Have a good rest of your day.